Hello my friends, Stark here. Today is the 4th of May 2018. Let's work upon a diagnosis together. Here's a 2001 Nissan Sentra. Not so much of an interesting car, but I hope you'll agree, an interesting problem. I bought this car as a non-runner from a gentleman that telephoned me about 2 weeks ago. Could I buy the car for junk? It wouldn't start. I explained to him that really I was moving out of the junk car business because of problems with the city. Yet, nevertheless, the car intrigued me and I thought there was a possibility of a successful repair. The gentleman had tried to repair the vehicle himself. He diagnosed the problem to a bad fuel pump, replaced the fuel pump, and yet the vehicle still wouldn't start. Frustrated, he sold it to me for junk. We'll work through the diagnosis now. Admittedly, that won't be a live diagnosis because I've already looked at the various components, but what will be a live performance is finally starting the vehicle, and we'll find out whether my diagnosis was correct. That I'm saving for you. I haven't started it yet. Here's the fuel pump assembly. The previous owner, instead of replacing the entire assembly, had instead replaced the actual electric fuel pump which sits inside the plastic body. I typically don't do that because it's really no more expensive to buy the complete assembly, if you buy it from the right place, than to just replace the electric pump inside. I prefer to buy all new rather than risk damage to the assembly by dismantling it. Alright, so the vehicle won't start. What could the problem be? The first thing that I checked were the fuses located under the dashboard. Fortunately, there's a handy fuse box map which is printed on the inside of the fuse box cover, and curiously the cover also doubles as a handy storage pocket. Pretty cool. Anyways, that wasn't the problem. The fuel pump fuse is good. So the next thing that I wanted to check is the relay which operates the fuel pump, and in this car it's the blue relay here. If the relay is working correctly, then we should hear a little click. I'll switch on the vehicle's ignition, and I don't know whether my camera will pick up that click through the microphone, but we'll try it. On my side of the camera, I could hear the click in the relay. Don't know whether you could. I'll remove the relay anyway, and we'll do a bench test on it just to prove that the relay is in fact fully operational. The chart on the case of this relay tells us that if we have an input circuit on pins 1 and 2, then if the relay is functioning correctly, we should have an output circuit on pins 3 and 5. It doesn't matter whether we apply a positive to pin 1 and a negative to pin 2, or the reverse, positive on 2 and negative on 1. Either way, if the relay is functioning correctly, then we should have an output circuit on pins 3 and 5, and we'll hear the relay click shut. Notice the open door symbol, and that's just telling us that these pins are the output pins. That circuit will be closed and operational only when we have power across the input pins 1 and 2. Get it? Well, let's test it. These are some of my workshop built test wires. I purchased the big crocodile clamps on the battery terminals from Rural King, and the small crocodile clamps for the actual testing from my local family-owned parts shop. It's nice to keep them in business instead of the chain type parts shops that we see in almost every town and city. Anyways, I'm using yellow wire for the positive and green with a yellow stripe for the negative, and I've already connected the negative wire to our relay. We'll take the positive and very carefully touch it to the opposite pin. We don't want to touch the two crocodile clamps together because that will be shorting the battery. So let's see if we can hear this relay click when we complete the input power circuit. I think you can all hear that. So this relay seems to be operational. Alright, so if it's neither the fuse nor the relay, how about the fuel pump itself? Now typically, to access the fuel pump, one would have to drop the fuel tank. What a pain that is. But in many Japanese vehicles, there's a super handy access plate under the rear seat. So, I've already removed the fuel pump assembly, which you saw earlier, and there's that access plate. Let's check that pump. Well, my thoughts were that the previous owner had somehow incorrectly installed the electric fuel pump within the fuel pump assembly, and I was checking it over to determine how to open the plastic casing when I noticed that one of the 5 pins in the electrical connector is broken off, and that first pin leads to the red wire, and my guess would be that that is the power wire for the electric pump, and hence that seems likely to be the reason why the car won't start and why the fuel pump won't switch on. And I bought a new assembly. Or compare to a good one here with all 5 pins intact. The design is a little bit different, but apparently this is compatible. Alright, we'll find out whether this works. I found the broken off pin still inside the mating electrical connector on the car's wiring harness, and I thought it would be difficult to extract, but it wasn't. Just pulled on it gently with a pair of tweezers and it came right out. New pump installed, and I did have to transfer the small clips from the previous pump. They weren't included with the new pump. Let's connect the two hoses. Already have the electrical connector plugged in, and that runs through an aperture in this cover plate. Alright, let's see whether she starts, eh? Hopefully this is it. Alright guys, this is my first attempt to start the Nissan subsequent to installing the new fuel pump assembly. Service engine soon. Nice. Needs fuel, almost empty. Switch that off before it damages the new fuel pump. Those in-tank pumps are cooled by being bathed in the gasoline, so it cooks them if they're not immersed in sufficient gasoline, and we don't want to burn out a new pump. Although the car starts and runs, the fuel level monitor was inoperative, wasn't telling us how much gasoline is in the tank. So I've removed the fuel pump assembly again, and I see that I can fit the float in two different directions, so I'm switching it around now. And apparently I should have had it that way in the first place because it matches the original fuel pump. I don't know why I thought it should be the other way. So I'll reinstall the pump, and I'm expecting that this time the fuel level monitor will be operational. Well, correctly orientating the float arm didn't resolve the situation. I thought that the floor of the tank might be contoured, and therefore it was important that the float arm be pointing backwards as it should be, rather than forwards, but didn't help. So what I've done here is I have the pump loose in the tank but with all the connections still in place, and I've separated the float assembly. I just wanted to take a good look at it, whether the wires were on correctly. They were, but what I found, let's see if I can get a look at this. What I found was that this piece of metal just there had come away from the plastic body, and I guess that was stopping it from making a good electrical connection. So I just pushed that home, and now I'm getting a reading on the dashboard on the fuel level monitor. So last thing, I just have to reconnect this to the pump, bolt it all back into place, and should be operational. Alright, well, I only had to install the pump 3 times. Cover plates back on, just missing the rear seat. Excellent, and now we have a reading on the fuel monitor. Alright, good enough. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Fuel pump diagnosis on a 2001 Nissan Sentra with unexpected problems on the float arm assembly. Take care. See you next time.